Let's begin by talking about some of the different kinds of geometry that we can work with in Softimage. So go ahead and open up a blank scene. And the first type of geometry that we're going to be looking at are polygons. So if you've used any other 3D application, you're probably pretty familiar with polygons, but if you're just getting started, we'll kind of talk about those. So to see polygons, let's go ahead and create. So we're going to go up here to Model, Get, and let's get a primitive, and let's choose a polygon mesh. And you can see that there's just a number of different kinds of meshes that we can go ahead and create. Let's just grab a simple cube. You can see our cube appears in our viewport, and we get a property page that's going to allow us to change some of the values of the cube. We can change the length of the sides. We can also add subdivisions on the cube. We'll go ahead and leave it at default. We'll go ahead and hit F to kind of frame up on that. All right, so we'll just go ahead and stay in a wireframe for now and just talk about kind of what makes up this polygon shape. So we've got three different component types that we're able to access. Right now we're in object mode here, so we can move around and select our object as a whole. But as we start to get into modeling with polygons, we're going to want to access the components. So to do that, we can either use these buttons over here. So we've got points, edges, and polygons. Those are the main three that we're going to be accessing for this polygon object. Okay. We can also use hotkeys. So if I hit the T key, that allows me to tag points. So I can select these points, and these are basically just positions in 3D space, okay, that they define a point. Now we can see that this got kind of a blue and a red dot here, but it really has no size. It's just a point in space. Now these points are connected by edges, so we can access those edges by hitting the E key or selecting this button. We can choose to select different edges. We can also our key across those. And then to select the actual polygon, so it may be a little confusing. This is a polygon object, but we can also select the polygons, and the polygon is just the face, the actual visible geometry. And so we can select polygon, or we can hit the Y key, and then this will allow us to select polygons, and you can see they're highlighted in red, and that's the actual face that is highlighted here. If we go ahead and turn on shaded, you can see that here. So we're able to now access the polygons or the faces. We can access the points, we can tag those. We can also access the edges. Okay, now there are lots of different kinds of polygons, as I said, that we can add. You can start to come in here and add a polygon sphere. And we can start to move this away, and we can see our sphere. Let's take a look, and these have the same exact components that our cube had. They're just configured a little bit differently. So we still have edges, polygons, and points, and we tag them in the same way. Okay, another type of geometry that we may want to use is a surface. So we'll go get primitive, and this time instead of a polygon mesh, let's get a surface. You can see there's a few options in here, so let's go ahead and get a sphere. We can change the radius as we create that. We can also change the subdivisions along the U and the V, and this is just both directions. So think of this as sort of like longitude and latitude of this sphere going in two directions. Okay, we can also start to change how this is kind of formed. And so we have two spots here for angles. So start U and end U, and then start V and end V. And so you can see that it's basically taking this line and rotating it around 360 degrees to form that piece. We can also take this up, and so you can see kind of how this forms this geometry. So it kind of comes down and then it wraps around. We have different components that we can select on this surface. Okay, and this NURB surface, it's more calculated from a mathematical kind of formula versus a polygon, which are kind of discrete points in space that are connected and form faceted polygons. And so for this, we can choose points. But you can see that these points they don't lie on the surface. And so you can see that the surface is actually formed by the calculation of where these points are and kind of the force that those exert on that curve as it comes around. And so as I kind of come out and manipulate this, you can see I can pull this point out and it sort of stretches everything. Okay. We can't really access edges, but selecting this, we can come into our sort of component filter here, and we can start to access things like the U ISO lines, which would be lines that are coming around in the vertical direction along the U. And you can see there's a value there. We can also access the V ISO lines, kind of coming in around here. So the surfaces, the NURB surfaces, you're going to be dealing with those in a little bit different way, but you can convert between NURBs and between surfaces and polygons. And so we'll look at, as we go through this project, some instances where polygons will be better and some instances where using surfaces will be better. Okay. Now, anytime you have your object, you can see the some of the information about the object. We'll talk about this a little bit later using the selection explorers. You can see I've got my NURBS or my sphere here. You can see NURB surface mesh, and then you start to get a lot of information about it here. We'll talk about that in the next couple of lessons. But in the next lesson, we'll actually start to talk about some more advanced component selections. And also, I wanted to mention that if you bring in a polygon mesh, for instance, we'll bring in another cube here, and let's increase the size a little bit, and let's add a few divisions here. We aren't stuck with just a low resolution polygon. We can actually kind of use a subdivision workflow, and to do that, we just hit the plus on our keyboard, and as I hit that several times, it progressively smooths out this polygon object. So this is really the best of both worlds between polygons and NURBs, because you get a nice smooth shape on the edges, but you still get all the cool modeling tools that you're able to use with polygons. And so that's just hitting plus on your keyboard. We can go back down and look at the low res just by taking that down and hitting minus on our keyboard. So plus and minus will take us up and down our levels. All right, so we took a look in this lesson at kind of dealing with basic polygons and basic surfaces and kind of looking at the components of those. In the next lesson, let's take a look at how we can start to select those components in different ways, because right now we can kind of pick on the piece here, or we can drag across, but there are a couple of other different ways that we can access our components. So let's take a look at that in the next lesson.